That was my answer. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana. Yamunatira Vanachari. Yamunatira Vanachari. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Paravajakacharya Ashtotar to the Sri Srimad Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Paravajakacharya Ashtotar to the Sri Srimad Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananda Koti Vaishnavini Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavad-gītā Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glory to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Okay, I'll do that next time. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Middle of page 19. Okay. On this 24th day of February, 2025 in San Diego. We're reading from Srimad Bhagavad-gītā as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. We are in the introduction, page 19, middle of the page, second paragraph. In the effulgent rays of the spiritual sky, there are innumerable planets floating. The Brahma Jyoti emanates from the supreme abode, Krishna Loka, and the Anandamaya, Chinmaya planets, which are not material, float in those rays. The Lord says, Natan bhasi yate suryo, nashashanko napavakaha, yadgatva nandavartante, taddhama padamang mama. One who can approach that spiritual sky is not required to descend again to the material sky. In the material sky, even if we approach the highest planet, Brahmaloka, what to speak of the moon, we will find the same conditions of life, namely birth, death, disease, and old age. No planet in the material universe is free from these four principles of material existence. Just one note on the Prabhupada's language. He uses the word approach to mean reach, in this case. So, I'm sorry I didn't replace it, but you get the idea. The living entities are traveling from one planet to another, but it is not that we can go to any planet we like merely by a mechanical arrangement. If we desire to go to other planets, there is a process for going there. This is also mentioned. Yanti deva vrata devan pitrin yanti patri vrataha. No mechanical arrangement is necessary if we want interplanetary travel. The Gita instructs, Yanti deva vrata devan. The moon, the sun, and higher planets are called Svargaloka. There are three different statuses of planets, higher, middle, and lower planetary systems. The Earth belongs to the middle planetary system. The Bhagavad Gita informs us how to travel to the higher planetary systems. Devaloka, with a very simple formula, Yanti Deva Vrata Devan. One need only worship the particular demigod of that particular planet, and in that way go to the moon or the sun or any other higher planetary systems, of the higher planetary systems. Yet the Bhagavad Gita does not advise us to go to any of the planets in this material world. Because even if we go to Brahmaloka, the highest planet, through some sort of mechanical contrivance by maybe traveling for 40,000 years, and who would live that long, we will still find the material inconveniences of birth, death, disease, and old age. But one who wants to approach the supreme planet, Krishna Loka, or any other planet within the spiritual sky, will not meet with these material inconveniences. Amongst all of the planets in the spiritual sky, there is one supreme planet called Goloka Vṛndāvana, the original planet in the abode of the original personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. All of this information is given in the Bhagavad Gita, and we are given through its instruction information how to leave the material world and begin a truly blissful life in the spiritual sky. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmiditam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Okay, time out. It's quite warm in here, isn't it? I think we can turn that heat off. Thank you. Okay. So I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisances unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. So, going to different planets. I think, yes, question already? Is it okay? Go ahead.
Hare Krishna. This one relates directly to what you just read.
I hope so.
Anyway, so I found it interesting. There's a sentence in that second paragraph on page 19. One who can approach that spiritual sky is not required to descend again to the material sky. I thought the word required was interesting.
Yeah. I mean, basically, if you get up there, you're not coming back. So if you're attached to coming here, you shouldn't go back up there.
But it gives a little leeway for coming back, maybe.
Well, you can come back, but who would want to?
I wouldn't.
The point is that in contrast to all other destinations you may go to, such as the heavenly planets, you eventually have to come back, because none of those planets are permanent, and your qualification for going to the planets is pious activity. You know, in other words, if you're very pious, you perform all these yajnas and you worship the presiding deity of the planet. That's the Yanti Deva Rata Deva, means those who worship the demigods go to the planets of the demigods, like that. Well, all of that is temporary. It's like a credit card. You know, oh, my bank account is full. The credit card is great. I go, you know, now I can go on a vacation to Hawaii or anywhere. But if Haribol, Joseph, thanks for coming. But eventually your card, you know, is depleted, and you have to leave Hawaii and come back to work. So similarly, Krishna describes in the 9th chapter that if those who worship me indirectly by worshiping the demigods, they can go to those planets. And he said, Tetam Bhuktva Svargaloka Vishalam. Svargaloka is the different higher planets, like Indraloka, Suryaloka, Chandraloka. Like. So I think he's referring basically to Indraloka. Tetam Bhuktva Svargalokam Vishalam. So Bhuktva means enjoying, Vishala means vast. And so having reached the planet, and now you've enjoyed vast pleasures for a long time, much longer than, you know, our longevity here, lifetime. Tetam Bhagavad Chine Punye Martyalokam Vishanti. Chine Punye means that your punya is used up. It becomes thin, and eventually it's nothing. So what happens? Martyalokam Vishanti. You're forced to come back down to this world, and Krishna doesn't describe it as Earth. He describes it as the death planet, Martyalokam, the planet where birth and death, birth and death. So what did you gain? Nothing. Evam Trahi Dharma. By worship, these Trahi means refers to the 3 Vedas, the 3 divisions of Vedas that contain all these instructions. Karma Kanda, for how to do this sacrifice, worship this, perform this, you know, fast, and worship Surya in this way. There's the mantras. Worship, you know, Indra, and then you can go, you know. So those who get into that discipline and do it right, it's not easy, they can go up to the higher planets. But then after this the next verse talks about that, and you enjoy like anything, but then your punya is used up and you come back to earth. So then what's the conclusion? Evam tahi dharmam anupapannagatagatam kama kama labante. Kama kama means trying to fulfill your material desires. What do you really get? You go up and you come back down, and you're right back here with Martyaloka, or birth, death, old, and disease. You didn't make any progress. In fact, you wasted a lot of time. So Krishna, in several places, he talks about, no, don't try to go to the heavenly planets. Don't be bewildered by all that inducement, you know, like that. So that's the idea. But here he's talking directly about Goloka. So, the qualities of Goloka Vṛndāvana, that's one of the main things. You don't have to come back. Yangadbhana davartante tadhama padamang mama. This is one of the verses in the Gita where Krishna says, once reaching it, you don't have to come back. In the 4th chapter, he says, Janma karma chame divyam evam yo veti tattvataha chaktva deham punarjanma naiti mam eti sorjana. You know, this is very encouraging. He says, those who know the transcendental nature, those who know in truth the transcendental nature of my birth and activities, after leaving this body, don't have to come back again. They come to me. You know? So that should be an inducement for us to read Krishna book and try to understand Krishna's Leela and live the life. Now, this word Brahma Jyoti, some of you may not know what that means. Brahma Jyoti means an effulgence, and Brahma is the Brahman effulgence, it's bright effulgence. It's understood early on in the Bhagavatam that there's 3 levels or 3 aspects of the absolute truth in progressive, how should I say, completeness. So the first level is this Brahma Jyoti, and this is aspired to by the impersonalists. Those who don't worship the personal form of God, they don't have any faith or whatever, but they believe in this this vast effulgence, spiritual effulgence, which is real. But it's a very preliminary, it's described as like the sunshine, You know, we're all familiar with sunshine. But there's a great distinction between the sunshine and the sun itself. And we know from the Shastra, certainly not from any scientific investigation, that there are also living entities on the sun. There's a sun god. Krishna says he spoke to him. He spoke this Bhagavad Gita to him millions of years ago. Vivasvan. And why not? We know that there are, you know, living entities in the water. We're living here on this land. And I remember years ago, because, you know, there's a huge trench off the coast here. I forget what it's called. It goes way down, you know, tens of miles, dozens of miles. You know about it, you know? No, not a shelf, but a trench, a depression, where it's very deep water, you know. And so there are little vents coming out, like little, you know, there's pressure, volcano, there's heat in there. And so they said they saw these little vents that are very, very hot, you know, and it evaporates the water way down there. This whole thing they investigated with probably robotic, you know, machines down there. And lo and behold, they took a sample of the water that's nearby there, and there's living entities in there, even though it's so hot. You know, usually if you boil it, it just kill everything. But no, there's something adapted to, you know, being in there. So the point I'm making is that even though by our you know, material science calculations, no one can live on the sun. Even Venus is usually hot. I read recently. It's super, like we have our carbon dioxide layers, you know, greenhouse gases that are blocking the emanation of the sun, so it gets hotter. Right? That's the whole idea. The problem. So there's still so much carbon dioxide on Venus that is super hot on that planet there, 700 degrees or something like that. Completely, you know. But it's a planet. There are living entities on there somehow, you know. That's what our understanding is. So there's this real distinction between Krishna Loka, Goloka Vṛndāvana, and all these other planets. Whatever other planet you're on, even up to Brahma Loka, Krishna makes that point. Brahma Bhuvana Loka Punarabhartanojana. Even up to Brahma Loka, it's a place of return. In other words, even he dies eventually, and he may not go back to Godhead. Not all the Brahmas go back to Godhead. And so what happens? Well, you come down to a lower planet and like that. You know, you're within the system. You know. So going to Goloka Vṛndāvana, you only get to go there if you are purely devoted to Krishna. Those who have no other desire to, you know, enjoy in this material world, whose karma has been completely purified by the process of devotional service, they can go up to the Goloka Vṛndāvana planet, back home, back to God, in Prabhupada's immortal phrase. That back home means that's where we came from. Not all devotees understand that, but that's, you know, so many times. I once checked at this database, you can count how many. There's over 600 times in Prabhupada's books and lectures and letters and everything where he said back home, back to Godhead. So there's no doubt that that's what he taught, and that's what we understand. So then the obvious question is, well, why in heck did we ever leave? You know, Goloka Vṛndāvana is a place of unending, ever-increasing bliss. You don't die. There's always, it's ever fresh. There's always new pastimes going on. You know, so why would we leave? What is that poem? Is that where Krishna lives? Felicity abounds, with pure simplicity and loving sensibility, all serve him with humility. But when a living entity rejects his true identity, and that if his stupidity surrenders to cupidity, he loses all sagacity and with it all capacity to understand reality or curb his sensuality. Abandoning humility, he touts his own ability, forgetting his fragility and fortune's volatility. Immersed in asininity for what seems an infinity of lives devoid of piety, he suffers an anxiety till contact with God's devotee, perhaps of utmost brevity, awakens his affinity for words of the divinity. Perceiving the futility of all his imbecility, the soul regains its sanity and casts away his vanity. Endowed with new humility, he serves with all ability and growing spontaneity his guru and the deity. Regaining his identity, the wayward living entity returns to the fraternity of Krishna for eternity. There it is. Class is over. Yes.
I have a good question. So we land down.
Oh yeah, use that. Yeah.
So we fell down from Goloka, like you just said. And then I say we get so purified, we go back. But what does it, I mean, you saying we'll be forever, but what if we fall again? I mean, there's an opportunity, or is
well, Krishna says in several places, once coming, you never leave. Now, it's not, the Prabhupada once quoted this, there's these little mottos, that mostly from England, because Prabhupada had an English education, Scottish. Once burned, twice shy. Have you ever heard that one? Once burned, twice shy. Prabhupada even uses that like with children. Sometimes children, they're very curious about the fire on the stove, and the mother says, no. But the child, okay, go ahead. Boom. Oh, never again. Remember, next time he sees the fire, okay, I get it. So we've been burned extensively in this birth. So even though we're not going to be remembering that, we're not have PTSD, up in Goloka Vṛndāvana, there's still enough of an aura of understanding. No. I'm staying with Krishna. So going back is itself it's a once in a lifetime's experience. We're not going to do it again. That's again and again. It's just, how did it happen? I always like to quote this verse. It's probably quoted all the time. Because as soon as you leave there and you come down to this world, then you have this fear, or maybe the fear of fear. In other words, well, I'm pretty okay now, but there's all these horrible things can happen, and oh my God. That's material life. So it says bhayam, that's bhaya. Bhayam tutiya bidabeshitak syad ishadapetasya viparhiyo asmati. Now these two lines describe the process of leaving the spiritual world. So in the spiritual world, and somehow or other we become curious of what's going on in this world of duality. So this is called dvitiya. Abhinabheshita means absorbed. So we're absorbed in the duality of this world, and we're attracted by the idea, which is complete craziness, that we can also be the master and the enjoyer, because we have the model in Krishna. So how does it work? We turn away from Krishna, we turn our back on Krishna. Ishad, from the Isha, apetasya. Viparyayo asmati, asmati, we forget. We forget all of our life in the spiritual world, obviously. And viparya means we're reversed. Instead of being the humble servant of God, we become the attempted master of Maya, and then we're knocked down repeatedly, and we take all these lower births. So it's a huge experience of forgetfulness. But still, that remembrance is deep in the heart. It's always there. Nitya Siddha Krishna Prain Sabya Kabanoi, Shravanadi Shuddha Chitte Kariya Hidoi. This is a famous verse by Lord Chaitanya, his teachings to Sanatana Goswami, I think. The eternal perfection of love of God is not something that needs to be brought in from outside. Nitya Siddha Krishna Prem Sadhya Kabunoi. Sadhya has two meanings. It has a very important meaning. It's the result of sadhana. And Lord Chaitanya asked Ramananda Roy, please instruct me in sadhya and sadhana. Lord Chaitanya took the role of the student. And Ramananda Roy was in the role of the guru. He was reluctant to do that. He said, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, how can I do that? Who am I? I'm just he was in the role of a Shudra, although he was a great devotee. Anyway, Lord Krishna spoke to another verse. He says, Kiba vipra, kiba nasa, kiba Shuddha kene noi, ye Krishna tattva vetta se guru hoy. Whether one is a sannyasi or a Brahmin or even a Shudra, if he knows the science of bhakti in and out, like you do, you can be a guru. You see, that's a central part of Lord Chaitanya's teachings. This external thing, birth, Brahman, the corruption of the varnashram is when you try to overlord the lower classes because of your birth. It's not the birth; it's your activities and your conscience and your qualities, guna and karma, that determines what you are. I'm sorry, go on. Okay.
Krishna, I just want to, I don't know if it's true, but I just want to fact check with you that Prabhupada once mentioned that when we were coming here, Krishna tried to stop us and we didn't Listen
He
to
did
him.
say one day, Krishna tried to convince us not to come down, but we were stubborn about it.
That's true. Okay.
Now, there may be a whole bunch of living entities who were considering it, and Krishna convinced them, no, and they didn't come. We came. So just to finish this verse. So the first two lines describe how we turned away from Krishna, and immediately the fear is there, because under the protection of Krishna, there's complete confidence, especially in the spiritual world. In Vrindavan, there's the fire comes, and they go, Krishna, please, we don't deserve to save us. They wonder. But in the spiritual world, there's total security there. But when we turn away, then the fear comes. Bhayam tutiyam syat. Syat means come into being in Sanskrit. And what's, the symptom, ishara petasya, and everything becomes reversed. Instead of becoming the humble servants, we try to be the masters. That's the reversal, you see. And we forget. And it's all due to Maya, tanmayato. By Krishna's Maya energy, she covers us and so forth. So what's the remedy? First of all, you have to be intelligent. Buddha. What do? Abhajetam. They worship that very Lord. Under the instruction of the Shastra and the Guru, they worship properly. Abhajetam. And how? Bhakti aikayesham, with one pointed devotion. In other words, seriously, not just as a hobby or something. Bhakti aikayekam and Guru Devatatma. Seeing the Guru as one's worshipable Lord also, and one's very self. So this one verse is like the fall and redemption of the soul. So we shouldn't be surrendered to cupidity. Now, I don't know if you know exactly what cupidity means. Cupidity actually means greed. But it so much obviously means greed combined with lust, So that's the formula for leaving the spiritual world. And that's because we carry that with us. That is love of God perverted. It's coming from that. Love, love of sense gratification is originally that absolute passion and, obsession to serve Krishna becomes obsession to control this material world. And even though, even from experience, oh, well, that's going to lead to a lot of suffering, We don't, first of all, we reject the idea of life after death. If people actually thought, "Oh, I have to pay for this," well, let me think twice. Everyone is going on like everyone's going on like they're going to live forever. And that's one of the advantages of getting old. You realize that yes, the youth is a very fleeting thing, right? I always like to give this example. From when I lived in Miami. I didn't just live in Miami. I lived on Miami Beach, literally within sight of the water, like one of these hotels built on the water. So somehow or other, ISKCON was able to buy an old hotel, and that's where the BBT was set up for production of the Bhagavatam. And so I lived in that building for 6 years. So they told me when I got there, they had just built a boardwalk, just like we have a boardwalk here, which it cost several $1 million or something. It was a long boardwalk. And so that gave the people who lived there, which is a lot of old retirees, a lot of them from New York, they would come and they were probably still living there in the hotels, So you get out of the hotel, you take a little walk, on the boardwalk, and you can see the ocean. So it was also a destination for wealthy, young members of the upper crust of like Brazil and other places down there, where they would come to Miami when it's winter down there, and it's pretty hot, but nice to the beach, it's cool just like here. So they would come. So there was a bunch of them, and they set up a volleyball net on the beach. And if you walked on the border, you would see them, guys and girls, playing volleyball, enjoying, And then just 25 feet away, the old codgers are walking on the boardwalk, So, having once been young, and remember what it was when I was 18, 19, you're in the complete illusion. Of course, you understand, I'm eventually going to get older, but that's not that's not how you live your life. It's like, oh, thank God I'm young, I'm constitutionally 19, maybe 20. And here are these poor older people. I'm not like that, It's complete ignorance. But that's what it is, and those young people, they're looking, but they're not getting the message that, hey, I got to be like that one time. Maybe I should check out the Hare Krishna temple. And No, they're absorbed in the volleyball and, you know, enjoying. So that's Maya. That's Maya. It covers your consciousness. It covers your seriousness about life. And the first lesson of Bhagavad Gita should, if one reads and has faith and actually believes it, bring about a revolution in one's life. And that lesson is a very simple lesson that you're not the body, you know, and that you're transmigrating even in this life, right? From childhood to adolescence, and all, we have the experience. Isn't that right, Kathy? Remember? You remember when you were 10 years old, right? Few things. Me too.
I was living in Japan then.
Oh, really? Okay. So, but I mean, we've changed a little bit. Body's changed, mind has changed. So we're the same person now, right? But we're different. So what's the same and what's different? The body is different. It's changed, grown, you know, lost some function. But we're the same person. So that person is the soul. Dehinosmin yata dehe. Dehinaha means the soul within the body. Deha means body. Dehina, it's very easy to remember. What's in the body, dehina, is the soul. Dehino asmin yata dehe, within the body. Komaram yovanam jara. Childhood, boyhood, you know, youth, old age. Jara. Tata, similarly, dehantara praptir. You're going to get another body. When this body finally breaks down, you know, you don't just cease to exist. You're going to get another body, you know. And then he says, "Dhiras tattva namuyati." Now he's speaking to Arjuna, who's reluctant to kill or participate in the killing of his beloved guru and Bhishma Dev, who was like a grandfather figure for him, and so many other friends and relatives he sees. So I don't want to, what's the use of this? You know, even if I win the battle, the war, I'll have the kingdom, it'll be soaked with the blood of the people I love, and so what's the point? I'm going to go and just become a beggar. I'll go, you know. But he wasn't suited for that. So the whole Bhagavad Gita was spoken to convince him not to do that and to fight. So, but that lesson is, and of course, they're repeated in the Gita. In the 13th chapter, there's a whole list of like 20 or 22 different elements of knowledge that we should have if we want to advance spiritually. And one of them is this very important point, janma, mrityu, jara, vyadi, dukkha, doshano darshanam. To be always aware of the distresses of birth, old age, disease, and death. I always like to put them in that order. That's not Krishna's order, because that's really the order that you're experiencing. Birth, I'm going, and old age or middle age, whatever it is, where you start to lose function. Old age, and then eventually that old age becomes disease. Old age is nothing, as long as you're completely healthy, and you know, yeah, but you don't. You get diseased. And that's painful. It can be very, very sad. And then death. You know, birth, old age, disease, and death. Birth, old age, disease, and death. So once you keep that in mind, that should be a serious impetus for practicing yoga and spiritual life. In other words, that keeps you serious if you're aware that you keep aware of that. But it's not the final motivation. Eventually, we find that the advanced devotees, they don't care. You know, like Lord Chaitanya says famously, he teaches us how to pray. Nadanang najanang nasundadim kapitam bhajagadisha kamaye. So he said, first he says, what I'm not praying to you for, my Lord. Nadanang najanang nasundadim kapitam bhajagadisha kamaye mama janmani janmani ishware bhavatad bhaktir ahoitaki dvahi. Ahoitaki bhakti. Now the word ahoitaki means without cause, and it's probably without motivation. But there is a motivation, without material motivation. That's the point. Millions of people go to church or mosque or synagogue every week, you know, or every day sometimes. But what are they going for? They're praying ardently. Please, you know, I need more money to pay my rent. You know, I hurt my leg and I have to go to the hospital. I don't have the money. You know, my child got sick. Please, my Lord, you know. So that's good, better than just being a total atheist. But it's not bhakti, you see. So that's why it says ahoitaki. Yeah.
Just a comment, like Badrinaram Swami in the last talk, he said they treat God like the Amazon cattle.
Yeah. No, it's true, you know. So he's teaching us how to pray, and he says janmani janmani. That means that birth after birth. He's not praying for liberation also. You know, that's also a material thing ultimately. So what should we pray for? Well, Lord Chaitanya teaches us. Unmotivated, unmaterially motivated devotion unto you. And then in the next verse, he confirms it. Again, this is the back to Godhead verse. This is Lord Chaitanya saying we fell from the spiritual world. Ainanda tanuja kinkaram patitam mam vishame bhavam bodo kripaya tavapada pankaja stita duli sadrishang vichindaya. Your servant for eternity, I lost my true identity and fell into this horrid sea of birth and death, O Lord. O Nanda's son, please him I plead, by your sweet grace consider me a speck of dust upon your lotus feet forevermore. So it's the same prayer. He's describing the mood. There's no mention of liberation there or anything. He just wants to be reinstated at the lotus feet of Krishna. So this Shikshastika is very important. Okay, did I go too far afield? Completely. All right, let's go on. Where were we? Middle of 19, is that where we started? Right? So now we're in the 15th chapter? Yes. In the 15th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, the real picture of the material world is given. It is said there, let's see, when we can do this first, and we're not chanting verses now. I'll say, you say, line at a time. Urdvamulamadakshakam Ashvattam prahuravyayam Chandangsi yasya parnani Yastam veda savedavit. Here the material world is described as a tree compared to a tree, described as a tree whose roots are upwards and branches are below. Here the material world is described as a tree whose roots are upwards and branches are below. We have experience of a tree whose roots are upwards. If one stands on the bank of a river and a reservoir of water, river is not kind of difficult if it's flowing fast. You won't see much reflection. So let's talk about a nice big lake. Or any reservoir of water, such as a lake. One can see that the trees are reflected in the water are upside down. The branches go downward and the roots go upward. Similarly, this material world is a reflection of the spiritual world. The material world is but a shadow of the reality. Now, Prabhupada used the word shadow often to mean reflection. In the shadow, there is no reality or a substantiality, but from the shadow we can understand that there are substance and reality. In the desert, there is no water, but the mirage suggests that there is such a thing as water. In the material world, there is no water, there is no happiness, but the real water of actual happiness is there in the spiritual world. The Lord suggests that we attain the spiritual world in the following manner. This is also a few verses later in chapter 15. I'll say you say, Nirmana moha jita sanga dosha Adhyatma nitya vinavritta kama Dvandvarva mukta sukha dukkha sangyar Gachancha mudha padamamvyayam tat. Okay, probably the padam abhyayam at the end of the verse. The padam abhyayam, or eternal kingdom, can be reached by one who is nirmana moha. What does this mean? We are after designations. Someone wants to become sir, someone wants to become lord, someone wants to become the president, or a rich man, or a king, or something else. As long as we are attached to these designations, we are attached to the body, because designations belong to the body. But we are not these bodies, and realizing this is the first stage in spiritual realization. We are associated with the three modes of material nature, but we must become detached through devotional service to the Lord. If we are not attached to devotional service, to the Lord, then we cannot become detached from the modes of material nature. Designations and attachments are due to our lust and desire, our wanting to lord it over the material nature. As long as we do not give up this propensity of lording it over material nature, there is no possibility of returning to the kingdom of the Supreme, the Sanatan Dhamma. That eternal kingdom, which is never destroyed, can be reached by one who is not bewildered by the attractions of false material enjoyments, who is situated in the service of the Supreme Lord. One so situated can easily approach that supreme abode. Elsewhere in the Gita 8:21 it is stated, Avyakto akshara ityuktas tavahu padamam gatim yam prapananavartante tadhama padamang mama. This is one of the several verses where he says, what's going, it'll return. Avyakta means unmanifested. Not even all of the material world is manifested before us. Our senses are so imperfect that we cannot even see all of the stars within this material universe. In the Vedic literature, we can receive much information about all the planets, and we can believe it or not believe it. All of the important planets are described in the Vedic literatures, especially Srimad Bhagavatam. And the spiritual world, which is beyond this material sky, is described as avyakta, unmanifested. It basically means invisible, avyakta. We can't see it with our present eyes. One should desire and hanker after that supreme kingdom. For when one attains that kingdom, he does not have to return to this material world. Now, how can we desire and hanker after that supreme kingdom? We have to hear about it. We have to read about it. And this is one of Prabhupada's great mercies on us. He gave us the Krishna book, which is the 10th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, which gives a nice description of Krishna's activities in Vrindavan and in Mathura and in Dwarka. And we can desire to go back there. And there's also the Chaitanya Charitamrita, the Nectar of Devotion. Also, it has so many wonderful descriptions of the different relationships there, and Krishna's special qualities, the 64 qualities of Krishna, 4 of which are completely unique to him. Let's see if I can remember it. Nikolad Buddha, no. Sarvabhuta Chamatkara Lila Kallolabhadadi. Sarvabhuta Chamatkara Lila Kallolabhadadi. He's an ocean full of amazing pastimes that astound everyone. Sarvabhuta Chamatkara Lila Kallolabhadadi. Atulya Maradas Prema Mandita Priyamandala. He's always surrounded by devotees, the gopis, who are at the highest levels of prema bhakti for him. Atulya Madhura Prema, sweet prema, sweet love, which is unequaled and unsurpassed. So that's unique to him, the gopis and his rasa dancing. Trijagan Manasarkashi Murali Kalakujataha. You know what it means? Murali Kalakujataha. He's always playing that wonderful flute that's attracting everyone in the 3 worlds. Trijagan Manasarkashi. It attracts the minds of it. Asamanordva Rupa Shri Vismapada Charachara. Unequaled and unsurpassed beauty and opulence. Now, there's so many details that are described about that. But those are like the 4 categories of unique that even the Narayans don't have those. They have beauty and everything, but not to the degree that Krishna has. So that's the unique quality of Goloka Vṛndāvana. Krishna's there in his original form. He's playing, ever fresh pastimes with his devotees, who include his elders like his parents, and Mother Yashoda and Nanda, his friends like Subal and Balaram is in that role, and his servants, like some of the friends are in that servant mood. And then there's the land and the the flute, we're in a passive relationship. Everything's alive there. Everything is conscious. But they're in the special relationships. So that's our eternal home, and we can actually become attracted if we hear and discuss and worship. Krishna will give us more and more attraction to that, which is really the ticket back home. Is this absolute greed? Greed is good. There's a verse. Kṛṣṇa bhakti rasa bhavatamati kriyatam jhatikatopi labhyate tattalayam apimulyam ekalam janmakoti sukataya nalabhyate. You know that one? So that first line is where Prabhupada get the phrase Krishna consciousness. Kṛṣṇa bhakti rasa bhavitamati. To have your mind, your mati, bhavita, absorbed in Krishna bhakti rasa, which means the varieties of loving exchanges with Krishna that are there in the spiritual world. So we can become absorbed in that by hearing and chanting, of course, Hare Krishna mantra and practicing bhakti. It's already in there, just to be uncovered. Kriyatam, so then he describes by a metaphor, if you can buy that, you should buy it in the marketplace. That Krishna bhakti, that pure Krishna consciousness. Krishna bhavatam and kriyatam yadi kutopi labhyate, if you can arrange to buy it. But you have to have the price. What's the price? Tattalalim. This is Prabhupada chanting it on the tape. Tattalalim abimulyam ekalam. There's only one mulyam, and that's the laulyam. Mulyam is the price, laulyam is greed. Your ardent desire for it. How to cultivate that ardent desire, that's the process of bhakti. Janma koti sukataina labhi, millions of births of pious activity won't cut it. You won't be able to get it. You know, you can go to heaven, you can go to heavenly planet, but you have to come back. So we should aspire for that greed, first of all, increase our desire for it. And that's the process of purification. It's already there, it just has to be uncovered. Okay. Now this wonderful verse is also in chapter 15, Nirmana Moha Jita Sangha Dosha. This is describing the process of surrender. You know, Nirmana, that's always the first step. Cut out the pride, you know. Amanitvam adambidvam. I said in the 13th chapter, I think I mentioned where you find Janma Mrityu Jaravadi, there's a whole list of aspects of knowledge. The very first one is pridelessness. Because you have to approach a guru in a humble state with straw in your mouth, you know, please instruct me, I don't know who I am, I don't know what I am. You know. So that lack of false pride, well, I know A, B, C, and D, maybe you can teach me F, but I already know A, B, C, and D. No, I don't know anything about this. So that the nirmana, free of the bewilderment that comes with too much pride, nirmana moha, having conquered jita sangha dosha, the faults that have accrued through bad association. That's also there in the Sadhu Sangashtaka, which I think we've been through, those who've been around for a while. So jita sangha dosha, adhyatma nitya, always on the spiritual plane and thinking of Krishna. Vinavritta kama, done with all of these lusty desires. Then, you know, having become freed from the duality, dvandva vimukta, characterized by sukha dukkha sangar, happiness and distress, then got such an amuda, an unbewildered soul, gachancha mudha, padamabhyang tat, to that transcendental abode. And immediately the next verse talks that at that point one has to surrender to the Lord who's there, you know, and it's very instructive, the first part of the 15th chapter. Okay, where do we end? How far do we get? Next, near the bottom of the page, okay. Next, one may raise the question of how one goes about approaching that abode of the Supreme Lord. Information of this is given in the 8th chapter. It is said there, Antakale chamameva smadan mukba kalevadam yakpriyati samadbhavam yati nastyatu sankshaya. So this is one of the several verses talking about the importance of remembering Krishna, time of death. And whoever at the end of life quits his body, remembering me alone, at once attains my nature. Of this there is no doubt. Bhagavad-gītā 8.5. One who thinks of Krishna at the time of death goes to Krishna. One must remember the form of Krishna. If he quits this body thinking of this form, he surely approaches the spiritual kingdom. Just substitute, yeah. Surely reaches the spiritual kingdom. Madbhavam refers to the supreme nature of the Supreme Being. The Supreme Being is Satchidananda Vigraha, that is, his form is eternal, full of knowledge and full of bliss. Our present body is not Satchidananda, it is Asat, not Sat. It is not eternal, it is perishable. It is not Chit, full of knowledge, but it is full of ignorance. We have no knowledge of the spiritual kingdom, nor do we even have perfect knowledge of this material world, where there are so many things unknown to us. The body is also nirananda. Instead of being full of bliss, it's full of misery. All of the miseries we experience in the material world arise from the body. But one who leaves this body thinking of Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, at once attains a Satchidananda body. The process of quitting this body and getting another body in the material world is also organized. A man dies after it has been decided what form of body he will have in the next life. Higher authorities, not the living entity himself, make this decision. According to our activities in this life, we either rise or sink. This life is a preparation for the next life. If we can prepare, therefore, in this life to get promotion to the kingdom of God, then surely after quitting this material body, we will attain a spiritual body just like the Lord's. As explained before, there are different kinds of transcendentalists. The Brahmavadi, Paramatma Vadi, and the devotee. I think I mentioned this. There's the Brahma Jyoti. Tadvidi Padipatena, not that. Vedanti tattva vidas tattvam yajnanamadvayam brahmeti padamatmeti bhagavaniti. Brahman, Brahma Jyoti, the Paramatma, Super Soul, and the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So there's a Brahmavadi, the Paramatmavadi, and the devotee. And as mentioned in the Brahma Jyoti, or spiritual sky, there are innumerable spiritual planets. The number of these planets is far, far greater than all of the planets of this material world. This material world has been approximated as only 1/4 of the creation, ekankshena sthito jagat. In the material segment, there are millions and billions of universes with trillions of planets and suns, stars, and moons. But this whole material creation is only a fragment of the total creation. Most of the creation is in the spiritual sky. Now, the creation is kind of a misnomer because it's never created. It's always eternal. It's always been. Most of the creation is in the spiritual sky. One who desires to merge into the existence of the Supreme Brahman is at once transferred to the Brahma Jyoti of the Supreme Lord and thus attains the spiritual sky. The devotee who wants to enjoy the association of the Lord enters into the Vaikuntha planets, which are innumerable. Vaikuntha means a place where there's no anxiety. Vaikuntha planets, which are innumerable, and the Supreme Lord, by his plenary expansions as Narayan, with 4 hands, and with the different names like Pradyumna, Aniruddha, and Govinda, associates with him there. Therefore, at the end of life, the Transcendentalist thinks either of the Brahmajyoti, the Paramatma, or the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. In all cases, they enter into the spiritual sky, but only the devotee, or he who is in personal touch with the Supreme Lord, enters into the Vaikuntha planets or the Goloka Vṛndāvana planet. The Lord further adds that of this there is no doubt. This must be believed firmly. We should not reject that which does not tally with our imagination. Our attitude should be that of Arjuna. I believe everything that you have said. Therefore, when the Lord says that at the time of death, whoever thinks of him as Brahman or Paramatma, or as the personality of God, it certainly enters into the spiritual world, there's no doubt about it. There is no question of disbelieving it. Now, this brings up the subject of faith. Everything rests on faith. That Lord Chaitanya defined that faith in his instructions to Sanatana Goswami, Shraddha Shabde Vishwas Kohe Sudridha Nishchoy Krishna Bhakti Korle Sarva Karma Krita Hoy. The real standard of the highest standard of faith is to be completely convinced. Shraddha Shabde. Shabde is a Bengali idiom that means, is defined as. Shraddha Shabde Vishwas Kohe. Vishwas means a conviction. Sudridha Nishchoy. Very strong understanding and conviction that what? Krishna Bhakti Korle Sarva Karma Krita Hoy. That simply the activity of bhakti yoga, practicing bhakti yoga, will give me all of the things that I aspire for in life. That will give me everything valuable in life. That's the pure faith. And with that kind of faith, then we can be confident, you see. And the faith, how does the faith develop? This is where the great acharyas come in, especially if you can get association of someone like Srila Prabhupada. And we can. He so mercifully left that associated with it. When we come to class, we're hearing from Srila Prabhupada. He said, I'm there in my purports. Everything is there. And also, I highly recommend to cultivate the ability to understand Prabhupada. Sometimes devotees have difficulty understanding accent when they first, but he had so many recordings are there to hear the actual words of the realized soul. There's a quality that you can't. There's even a verse in the 4th canto, the famous purport. It's about how the voice of the realized soul is in direct touch with the lotus feet of the Lord and can pick up the saffron mercy particles strewn on the lotus feet of Krishna. And when you hear that voice, speaking transcendental knowledge, obviously, then that enters with you and it's so purifying, uniquely. So, Prabhupada's, if you're curious, I can give you links where you can download unlimited lectures of Prabhupada. There's something called the ISKCON Desire Tree site, where there's part of it is audios, and not just Prabhupada. Prabhupada is there, of course, all of his lectures, but then, great souls like Shivaram Swami and Satyananda Swami, and, their lectures are up there. They even gave me a little corner. I have a few lectures up there. You can skip over those. But there's tremendous potency in hearing, and that builds your faith, Prabhupada's persona, when he was traveling around personally, he was able to infuse devotees with confidence and faith. All right, let me try this, Hare Krishna. And then in the experience, and then your faith deepens. Oh, there's something here. It's every path. If you're going to do Hatha Yoga, where do you get the faith? Oh, you see all those swell, ladies and men, and how healthy they look, and you read a book, and All right, let me try it. You know, it's only $5. Now it's probably $15, $25. And sure enough, it works. You know, I did it for a while. I still stand in my head a little bit. Otherwise, I wouldn't remember any shlokas. All right, so how far did we get? Second paragraph on 23? That's it, right? Okay. So we still have a minute or two for one more poem. Okay. So let's see. So how to pray. So here's one beautiful verse, Rupa Goswami's Stavamala. Bhujanga da pachandaka spuda da kanda chudanka de nirankasha da gansha da brahmina badna bringa brahme patanga du hetustati vanakati da keli pihe padaspuda me mohastvaya mukunda Shuddharati. Shuddharati means pure devotion, pure love. You wear the best of crests, a crown of perfect peacock plumes. Your dancing glances stun the bees meandering midst the blooms. You relish love play in a cottage by Kalindi's shore. Kalindi is the river Yamuna. O Krishna, may pure love for you be mine forevermore. Hare Krishna. So you send me an email. I'll send you my poetry. You have it already, Kathy? You have my poetry file? You do have it. I have a whole file of poetry. Okay, she has it. All right, let's adjourn and we'll gather for our tea. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hari Hari Bol.